Hello. I am so excited to be here today because there's been a lot happening. There's been a whole lot happening in our community across the globe. April has been a tough month for most of us in the autistic community. As we move into this discussion today, I would like to lovingly and respectfully remind each person that joins us to participate. We've got some ground rules in the Mind Your Autistic Brain community. I formed this community based in kindness, gentleness, patience, and understanding. That applies not just to one another, but to ourselves. So often we've gone for decades and we haven't extended kindness, gentleness, patience, or understanding to ourselves. As we are in this discussion today, I would like to remind each and every one of us, myself included, that if we approach anything hard, like the conversation we're about to have, we need to approach it with kindness, gentleness, patience, and understanding for one another as well. So I wanted to have this conversation because it is a mission of healing, not just for my friends in the autistic community, but for myself as well. Yesterday, I know many of us have seen the rounds being made for many things, addressing a new initiative that's happening and a huge celebrity-supported and backed an event that will be airing, I believe it's April the 30th. It's called Color the Spectrum, and it's supporting an organization that is not speaking our voices. It doesn't even include our voices. And this is so often what has happened in our world. We have so many things that occur about us without us. You know, we've got a hashtag in our community, not about us, without us. And this event is happening without us. I want to stop and I want to acknowledge and commend so many autism advocates and autistics in our community who have done such a beautiful job of not reacting, but responding to this event in such beautiful ways. And I am so incredibly proud to be a part of the community of people who are responding in a really beautiful way that is helping to elevate and advance more discussions. Not divisiveness, not blaming, not shouting, not arguing, but from a place of response that is thoughtful and aware. So thank you so much to so many of you for that. Autism is known in most of the world as Autism Awareness Month. Well, that's kind of crazy because we're all very aware. We're all so aware. We are so painfully aware that yes, autism exists. We live it. We are autistic. And we've made a shift in our community for autism acceptance. And I think that has to also not just extend to those around us, our friends and our family, but that has to go internal as well. And that's a big struggle that so many of us have when we start our journey, especially as late identified autistics. We're so relieved to have the answer, to have an idea of why things have been so hard, why things have been such a struggle. But then we do have difficulty accepting ourselves. It's still a tough part of the process in that early journey. And I just want you to know that you are enough just as you are. Who you are is who you are meant to be, and you are beautifully and wonderfully wired. You are not broken. You are not defective. You are not the things that you hear and remember. Because it's our human brain that has that negative bias to only remember the negative that someone says. There could be 10 amazing things someone has told you about yourself, but you're going to remember that one thing. And I just want to lovingly remind you that you are wonderful and that you are loved just as you are. This conversation is also about changing the broken narrative. We have a broken narrative in our world when it comes to us as autistics. And we are responsible for being a big part of the conversation to change this broken narrative. But we are only part of the conversation. The responsibility does not fully lie all on our shoulders. But we bear yoking that challenge and that broken narrative to change it with others. I want to talk about some ways that we can begin to change this broken narrative. What are some ways that we can begin to change the broken narrative around autism that's out there right now? Because we know it's broken. We know it's not working. We know that it does not speak the truth of our existence and our experience and our perspective. And that's where I want to suggest that we start. We have to start with sharing our perspective. And I'm going to give an analogy here to sort of relate this and how I'm seeing it. We could each be standing on opposite sides of one another, looking down at a number on the ground. You see a 6. I see a 9. And if we change places, we can see how the other person saw a 6 and how the other person saw a 9. It comes through communication. And as we know, we communicate really well with each other. We communicate beautifully, one neurodistinct person to another. Science research is even showing that we communicate better within our neurotype and more specifically and detailed and more effectively than those who are non-neurodistinct. So I think we have an amazing amount to teach, to share from our perspective. And I think that begins with just being kind, just being gentle, patient, and understanding with ourselves, with one another, and beginning to ask questions. You know, I was reflecting on the judge. We have these internal judges that live in our head as humans. All humans do. And that judge can be pretty harsh, and it's usually the harshest to ourselves. But in that, what I was noticing is we make these internal judgments about other people or what is said or how something is said or why something is said. And at the heart of the miscommunication, at the heart of the hurt, at the heart of the destruction that sometimes happens in that, is that there is a lack of questioning. There's a lack of asking why. Why do you think that way? Why do you feel that way? Can you share with me why you think or feel this way? And I can honestly say that in my lifetime, and I'm 46, almost 47, coming up on May the 2nd, I'll have a birthday. Ooh, that's a big one. That I'm not asked that question. Hardly at all. Are you? Are you guys ever asked that question? Do people stop and ask you, why do you feel this way? Why do you act this way? Why do you do these things? Why do you say this? Does anyone ask you those questions, guys? I'm clicked over to the comments box so I can see. Hey, everybody. Hey. Oh, thanks, Alex. I appreciate it. Yeah. It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen very often. And I think that that really goes to the heart of how we start to change the broken narrative. Is we start to encourage, because sometimes people are afraid. Most humans live afraid of everything. On some level, you're afraid of being judged. You're afraid of what someone thinks of you. You're afraid to speak up because you might be judged for it. You might be ostracized for it. And as autistics, whoo, baby, we live in a world where we feel like everything we do is judged. Everything we do is somehow wrong based on societal norms and what people seem to expect to happen. And I think it's that anticipation and those expectations that we can slowly begin to address and change as we share perspectives and we ask, why? Just a simple why. Because I want to know, because I care, because it matters to me. There's a statement that I see in the autistic community, and I've been seeing it for a while. And it is, the world was not designed for us. And I see it in a lot of other, I'm also ADHD and it happens in that group as well. The world was not designed for us. It never sat well with me. I couldn't quite at first pinpoint, thank you, Alexithymia, couldn't quite pinpoint why it was that this statement didn't really sit with me very well. It made me physically respond like, And my dear friend Eveline Wielden from Awesome Training questions what's human and just what's autistic. And I love her questioning mind because that is part of her autistic brain, which I love. And that's part of so many of our thought processes. We process and think, why is something like this? We ask that question of ourselves and of the world constantly, but we're not often asked that of ourselves, are we? Others don't usually ask that. In this statement, the world was not designed for us, not sitting well with me. It's really been niggling at me a lot lately, especially this month. And I thought, is this statement true? Is this statement true? Was the world not designed for us? This is what I came up with. This was sort of my thought on this. And I wanted to share it with you guys because I want to know why someone else thinks this, or maybe to see if there's a blind spot or something I'm missing. Here it is. I'm just going to throw you my Carol Jeanism at you, okay? If the world was not designed for us, that implies that it was designed for someone else. That means thought and intention and awareness and planning went into designing the world. Now, here's the big one here. This is how come I don't believe this to be a true statement. The world as we know it was not consciously designed. It is the result of the world in which we live in now, societal norms as they are, the way the world thinks in general, including us. This was not by design, my friends. This was a reactionary, evolutionary result of two things: fear and control. It was not designed. No one intentionally stood up and said, I am going to design everything to segregate every group that is different because only one is right and the others are wrong. No group intentionally thought that. Now, there probably was that thought along the way in some of these results. But the world we live in today, my friends, this is a culmination of eons of fear and control. So the world wasn't designed for humanity, period. It wasn't designed for anybody other than whoever was in control at the moment, and that changes constantly. So my response to this has been one that has been brewing as well. We are people of distinction. Autistics, neurodistinct people. We are people of distinction. We were created to be disruptors of the status quo. Now, in amongst my many worlds and jobs that I've had, I've worked in the legal profession. And when you talk about the status quo, it's usually in a divorce, and it's not a pretty thing. The status quo just simply means maintaining what is. We, as neurodistinct people, are created to be disruptors of the status quo. We have been created. We are part of humanity, and we are necessary for the development of humanity, for the elevation of humanity. Our neurodistinct thinking, the gift that we really don't care on so many levels about societal norms. However, we do care about connection. We feel very deeply about justice. We are greatly concerned about the welfare of others. There are so many innovators, creators, humanitarians, and people who fight for justice on every level across the globe. And we are neurodistinct. We are some of the most influential and out-of-the-box thinkers. We have a very specific and distinct place in humanity, and that is to be the disruptors of the status quo. We are not here to maintain what is. We are here to question it. We are here to change it and to change the broken narrative that the world is accepting complacently each and every day. I would like to end with one thing, one word. It is an African word that I have recently learned, and it is the word Ubuntu. Ubuntu is not just a word. It is not a word you define. It is a way of living. It is a way of thinking, and I would like to share it with you. Ubuntu means I am because we are. I am me, and I am my best me because you are being your best you. I cannot be my best self if you are not being your best self. Together, we are. Together. That means all neurotypes are necessary. All ability levels are necessary for humanity. It is in this that I ask each and every person to reflect on how we look at the world, how we look at ourselves, how we look at one another, and how we share our perspective to help another person see that there is more than one way and that together we are. Thank you for being here, my friends. I'm going to check the chat box. Is life all about embracing pain? That's a deep question. Pain is part of life. Pain, just like failure, is part of life. You you don't have one without another. You don't feel good without also feeling bad at some point. It's a balance. There is that duality of existence. Alex has a comment that there is a systematic ableism. Okay. Yes. And what are we each individually doing? How are we sharing our perspective and sharing our voice to change the broken narrative? There's sort of my question today. What are ways that we can utilize to change the broken narrative? It's easy to slap labels on things because we know how that is. People slap labels on us all the time. But are we guilty of doing the same? As humans, we all have blind spots. I have them. They're all over the place. And I'm in a constant seeking awareness and reflection to ensure that I am becoming aware of my own blind spots. And remember, when you point a finger at a person and you say, here's your blind spot, here's where you're broken, here's where the splinter is in your eye, and you fail to recognize the log in your own, can you really help? Can you really change anything if you're not also looking internally? We can't have a discussion to try and change and elevate and come together if we can't do it in our own community and if we're hurting one another within the autistic community. And so I just simply employ and ask each person, let's come together in kindness, gentleness, patience, and understanding together so that we may come together and elevate and lift as one resounding voice of many, many perspectives and many voices, because one will never be enough. One will never fully encompass all that we are and what we are meant to be. Thank you for joining me. I hope that some of this has been helpful to help give you some healing and to help give you some ideas and some ways to think about how we can better live in Ubuntu. Have a wonderful day.